My stepdaughter once told me I should feel grateful just to sit in the audience at her wedding. Instead, I chose a different seat, the one at the bank, where I canceled every pending transfer and let her biological father take the spotlight. The irony? Guests noticed the consequences right away. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Venomous Vows. I used to think people were simply misguided sometimes, that with enough love and effort, they'd eventually see your value. But let me tell you, there are people who will drain your wallet, your pride, and your soul, then turn around and act like you should thank them for the privilege of being stepped on. My name is Tom, I'm 54, and I've been with my partner Cynthia for almost 17 years. We never married, but we built a full life together. Bills, memories, heartaches, and joys. Most importantly, I stepped into the role of raising her daughter, Lacey, when she was just 10 years old. And when I say raising her, I don't mean I was just in the background. I was the one who picked her up when she fell off her bike and tore up her knees. The one who sat at every parent-teacher conference, who drove her to soccer practice at 6 a.m. every Saturday, who stayed up all night helping with projects she left until the last minute. I was the one holding her hair back when she was sick after prom, the one co-signing her first car loan. And yes, the one who paid her entire college tuition, every semester, every dollar, including an $8,000 summer program in Italy, because she wanted that experience. I poured my time, money, and heart into raising her as if she were my own flesh and blood. Meanwhile, her biological father, Gary, floated in and out like a ghost. No child support, no school events, no consistency. A birthday card here, a phone call on Christmas if he remembered. And still, in her eyes, he was this tragic hero she excused, while I was just the reliable guy in the background fixing her problems. But I didn't complain. I figured when the big milestones came, when it really mattered, she'd recognize who was truly there for her. I could not have been more wrong. Last year, Lacey got engaged to Noah, a decent kid with a solid career. She was ecstatic, and so was I. Watching her bounce around in excitement, I thought, my little girl is getting married. Planning started immediately, dress fittings, cake tastings, venue tours, florist meetings. And every time money was needed, guess whose phone rang? It wasn't Gary's. It was mine. Tom, the venue deposit is $15,000. Of course, you sweetheart. Tom, the photographer wants $8,000 up front. No problem. Tom, the florist needs payment in advance. Consider it done. Over 6 months, I poured in nearly $58,000. And I wasn't just paying bills. I was deeply invested. I went to tastings, I toured venues. I even spent weekends driving hours to look at potential reception sites. I wanted everything to be perfect for her. On top of that, I hosted an engagement party at our house that cost another $6,000. Because that's what a father does. And then, 6 weeks before the wedding, came the gut punch that would change everything. We were at the final walkthrough with the planner when Lacey casually said, "Oh, make sure Gary's boutonniere matches mine." He's walking me down the aisle, I blinked, convinced I misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" She looked annoyed, like I was slow. "Gary's walking me down the aisle." I thought I told you. I tried to stay calm and said, "I assumed I would walk you down." She actually laughed. "Tom, come on, Gary's my real father. It just makes sense." And then, as if twisting the knife wasn't enough, she added, "Honestly, you should be grateful you're even invited to sit in the audience." A lot of stepfathers don't even get that, sit in the audience, like a distant cousin, after 17 years of raising her. That night I didn't sleep. I replayed every sacrifice, every choice, every memory, and realized it all meant nothing to her. The next morning I called Gary directly. "So you're walking Lacey down the aisle?" I asked. He was cheerful, even smug. "Yeah, she asked me." Pretty excited, I pressed. "Are you contributing anything financially?" Silence. "I've spent about $64,000 so far," I told him. "Thought maybe you'd want to cover the rehearsal dinner or something." More silence. Finally, he muttered, "Look, Tom, I appreciate what you've done, but you're the one with money." And that was it. At the final family dinner before the wedding, Lacey stood to give a toast. She thanked Noah's parents. She thanked her mom. She thanked Gary for making the trip. She never once mentioned me, not even a simple thank you for funding nearly everything. That night, I sat in my office staring at my banking app. Then I started making calls. Every pending transfer canceled. Every final payment terminated. The $22,000 due that week? Not happening. Vendors don't play around. No payment, no service. 3 days before the wedding, Cynthia called me in a panic. The caterer says the payment was declined. That's odd, I said. Tom, did you cancel? Yes, because I was told to be grateful to sit in the audience. So I'll be grateful from the bank instead. Chaos erupted. Lacey called, shrieking that I was sabotaging her big day. I stayed calm. Your real father is walking you down the aisle. Maybe your real father can handle the real bills. Click. 2 days of madness followed. Noah's parents scrambled, but they'd already spent thousands flying family in. Gary vanished. Phones off. The wedding day arrived and I showed up. Not as a guest, but parked across the street watching. At 2 p.m., guests were still milling outside. The florist sent grocery store level flowers. The DJ bailed. Music played from a phone on a tiny speaker. The photographer showed up but left halfway when payment didn't come. Gary arrived late, sweating, and was bombarded with questions about unpaid bills. By the time the ceremony started, it was obvious something was off. The reception was worse. Cheap sandwiches, a store-bought cake, alcohol gone in an hour, no music, guests leaving early. Gary paced outside looking like he wanted to crawl into a hole. I drove home, poured myself a bourbon, and waited for the fallout. It came that night. Noah called, apologizing, admitting he had no idea how much I had contributed and that Lacey had downplayed my role. He called me her real dad and said they'd messed up. I let him talk, then said nothing. Over the next days, Cynthia moved in with her sister, and Lacey sent me a 10-page letter blaming me for humiliating her. I tossed it in the fire after reading the first few lines. But here's what made it worth it. 2 weeks later, a neighbor who attended the wedding pulled me aside and said, Tom, everyone knew what you did for her. People were talking all night about how she treated you and how Gary looked lost. Nobody blamed you. Honestly, people respected that you stood up for yourself. Even Gary eventually called, admitting he hadn't realized all I had done and saying he felt like an ass. I told him, you should, and hung up. Noah later confessed that he and Lacey had been fighting because the more he learned about her childhood, the more disgusted he was with how she dismissed me. He even admitted, Tom, you spent more on our wedding than my parents did on their house down payment. She treated you like hired help. I don't blame you at all. Since then, Lacey hasn't spoken to me. Cynthia and I are in counseling, working through the wreckage. But for the first time in years, I sleep peacefully because I finally know where I stand. I'm not wondering anymore if I mattered. I learned the truth. And in the sweetest twist of irony, I've heard Gary ghosted again after the wedding, telling Lacey flat out he wasn't interested in being a father. The man she called her real dad walked her down the aisle and then walked right back out of her life. Meanwhile, I'm the one who apparently wasn't real. So here's my question to you. Was I the villain for pulling my financial support when I was told to sit quietly in the audience? Or did I finally set the boundary I should have set years ago? What would you have done if you spent nearly 2 decades and over $60,000 raising someone, only to be treated like an afterthought at their wedding? Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to know if you'd have done the same.